Welcome, folks. We're going to continue with the Lilith theory, and this is a reading and discussion. So if anyone interested in this kind of material, come on into the room. We'll discuss. Let's see here. Do some okay, and double check and make sure we've got this running properly. Okay, so we've got this on the hot channels now, and we're going to have this on YouTube. So we're gonna continue reading here. We left off last time between. If you look at the videos, I've got about 7 videos, I think, that's on that YouTube section there. That's the YouTube is the Hebrew Messianic YouTube. And the playlist, I think there are 7 of them. That's correct. So this would be number 8. So it's been a while since I've done this, so I'm going to continue along here. 3.19 parallels between Yahweh's cursing of Eve and the serpent. I'll remove this. See if I can remove it. Let's see here. Knock that out of there. Okay. So we'll move this like this. Okay. Okay, some of the strongest evidence for Lilith derives from the specifics of Yahweh's curse upon the serpent and Eve in their garden judgment. In Genesis 3:15, Yahweh declares, Yahweh declares that he would put enmity between the serpent and Eve. This alludes to a rivalry between the two. This rivalry is also seen in the parallels of the curse imposed upon each, implied in any rivalry that is a similarity and equality of roles between the two rivals. This is certainly the case between Eve and the serpent. Yahweh states that he would put enmity between the seeds of serpent and Eve. This puts the serpent and Eve on equal terms as progenitors of rival generations. Because Eve is a mother in this rivalry, one would expect the serpent to likewise be a mother. From the parallelism of the serpent's role in the rivalry with Eve's role, they should both be the mothers of rival generations. This requires that the serpent be a woman and a mother. None other than Lilith can explain this female rival to Eve. Okay, so this is Genesis chapter 3, verse 14 to 16. And Yahweh Elohim said unto the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. Verse 15, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and you shall bruise his heel. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception in sorrow. You shall bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Okay, so notice the point here is that the Bible literally does say that the serpent has a seed, So rivalry announced by Yahweh in Genesis 3:15 is a continuation of the rivalry first established between the generations of heaven and earth in Genesis 2. This was discussed in detail in section 3:2 in the creation of Adam and Lilith. Yahweh announced that they would be the heads of 2 great rival generations. After a long struggle with Lilith's generations of the heavens, Adam's generations of the earth would flourish and bring the remembrance of Yahweh upon the earth. So the generations of the earth, remember that Adam means of the earth. And so remember that Yahweh took clay of the earth and he breathed his spirit into Adam, and Adam became a living being. And then what happened is it says later in the narrative that Yahweh took a rib out of Adam and he fashioned with clay a subordinate to him, and this was Eve. Paul makes reference to this as well. But notice that the serpent has generations, and there is a conflict between the generations of the serpent and the generations of the earth. Now, why is it that Lilith's generations are called of heaven? Well, that is a reference to the book of Enoch. And in the book of Enoch, it says that 200 fallen angels, watchers, came down to Mount Hermon, and they made a covenant with one another that this was going to be something they were going to do, and they were not going to shy away from it. They were going to do this. This was a covenant that they would make, such that then the generations of what happened is the covenant was that they would basically go in unto human women and produce genetically superior progeny. These would be like the giants of times past. This is where you get the myth of Hercules. This is where in Greek mythology and Roman mythology, they all have these beings that are half God, half man, essentially. Okay, this same rivalry comes to the forefront again in Genesis 3:15, where Yahweh announces Eve's role and Adam's lineage as the counterpart to Lilith. There is a final counterpart to dispel. Some may doubt the serpent could be a woman in verse 15 due to a mistaken notion that the women do not have seed, according to the vernacular of the Bible, but that only men do. This erroneous belief has been somewhat popularized in recent times to support the notion that it is unique for Eve to have seed, and that this speaks of the virgin birth of Christ. The theory goes that the term is uniquely applied to Eve because her seed, Christ, is unbegotten by man. Although it is true that the concept of having seed is usually associated with men in the Bible, in at least 7 other occasions in the Old Testament refers to the seed of a woman. These are Genesis 4:25. Let's take a look at that. Genesis 4:25. Okay, so here it is. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, called his name Seth. For Elohim said, she hath appointed me unto the seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Interesting. Okay, so, and then also there is Genesis 24:60. Let's take a look at that one, Genesis 24:60. We can get over there. Get the right colon mark in there. All right, and they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, you are our sister, be you the mother of me, thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gates of those which hate them. Interesting. Okay, and then we have Leviticus 22:13. See here, I wonder if this little search the web thing would automatically yield this. Yeah, it does, but it doesn't yield what I want. Let's see here. I'm going to knock this. Get rid of that. We'll go back here. Okay. Leviticus 22:13. Okay, but if the priest's daughter be a widow or divorced, have no child, and is returned unto her father's house, as in her youth, she shall eat of her father's meat, but there shall be no stranger, but no stranger shall eat thereof. Okay, that's 22:13. I think it's 22, what is this? 22, yeah, Leviticus 22:13. So what's the point they're making there? This one's got to be Ruth, 4:12. Let's take a look at that one. All right, and let thy house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which Yahweh shall give thee of this young woman. Okay, so the Bible does seem to describe things this way. And I don't think we need to look at the other ones there. I think we look at enough. For example, consider Genesis 24:16 there, when Rebecca leaves to marry Isaac, her family blesses her. They tell her to be a mother of the thousands of millions, and they say, let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. Some of the instances of a woman's seed might be considered prophetic references of the same messianic birth to Eve, especially this is Isaiah, looks like, or no, 1 Samuel 1:11 and 2:20. But others, especially Genesis 24:60 and Leviticus 22:13, are far removed from any possible prophetic implications. Thus, the seed of a woman is not an exceptional term in the Bible. So he's saying that this theory that Eve had her own seed within her is not correct when you understand that this is talking about two different generations of seeds. The seed, this would be the generations of heaven, the generations of the earth. Generations of the earth would be mankind, descended from Adam and Eve. Generations of heavens would be the Nephilim, which, as we discussed in earlier videos on this, was basically the idea of Lilith having copulation with Samael, one of the leaders of the 200 fallen angels that came down to Mount Hermon and made a pact and saying, we're gonna have sex with human women, and we're gonna mess up God's creation. We're gonna maybe even they had delusions of grandeur. Maybe thought they would make it better. Our progeny is going to be stronger. You hear themes like that even today in science, right? We're going to be stronger, better. You see that theme in the Marvel series of Iron Man. Remember the main protagonist there who has the Iron Man suit. His father is always talking about mankind can be better. If you see those videos of him and the protagonist is watching his father on the video. I just saw one of those recently. They're talking about we can be better. Well, maybe even these fallen angels had that viewpoint. We can be better. We can make mankind better. So therefore, we're going to go into human women and we're going to produce better progeny. It turns out it was a disaster because the Nephilim were totally without remorse, totally without morality. Everything they did was violent. And if Yahweh had not destroyed the earth with a flood, no flesh would be saved. Not even the righteous seed, that being the proper righteous seed of Adam and Eve, and then their descendants all the way to Noah, and a soul saved alive. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. Even if the phraseology woman having seed was considered exceptional for Eve, then the same exceptional overtones could be extended to the serpent. The serpent's seed might denote a supernatural anti-Messiah who was begotten of man. Indeed, as we shall discuss later in chapter 6, it is almost certainly the case. The serpent's seed was Azazel, and he was not sired by man, but of fallen angels. Remember, I mentioned that. It says that in the book of Enoch. Okay, so here we are, 3:20. Now, normally I would stop here and we would have discussion, but I don't know if you have anything, any comment on that, Steve, or if you're just kind of there listening, but I could continue on. If not, let me see if we have any comments. Oh, we got some other people coming in. Vicky's coming in. Hey, Vicky, welcome. So we are going over this material, and we're also discussing, we just got finished with discussing the difference between the generations of the earth and the generations of the heavens. Generations of the earth have to do with Adam and Eve and their progeny. The generations of the heaven have to do with, in this understanding, the progeny between Samael, one of the 200 fallen angels that made a pact on Mount Hermon. This is written about in the book of Enoch. It's also a veiled reference in Genesis chapter 6 to this as well, this event. And then the progeny of this is Azazel. And we find out earlier in some of these other videos that Azazel is the byproduct of this demoness, Lilith, and one of these fallen angels. And Azazel represents the beginning of the generations of the heavens. And they are in conflict with mankind. In other words, the generations of the earth, Adam means from the earth, Adamah. The earth literally is the Hebrew word Adamah. So that's kind of where we're at here. Okay, so now we are on 320. The serpent's curse matched those of an adulterous wife in the bitter water trial. Okay, we got a question here. One question I had was, is that where some say Yahweh or they say Yahweh is female? Well, this Lilith character is you're talking about, you're not talking about Lilith as in the idea of Yahweh having a female attribute is, I think they look at some of the grammar forms, and because some of them have feminine grammar forms, they try to say that Yahweh is female or has female attributes. The problem with that grammatically is that if you study Hebrew, you see all different kinds of words that have feminine endings. They're considered irregular, but they still are masculine gender. They're still masculine gender, even though it appears as if they have a feminine ending, okay? I'm trying to remember if there's some examples of that off the top of my head. I hope that answers your question there, Steve. Okay, so let's continue on here. It says the serpent's curse match those of an adulterous wife in the bitter water trial. So remember, in the bitter water trial, this is in the book of Numbers. And basically, the whole idea is a jealous husband would drag his wife to the priest and say, I suspect this wife I have has been sleeping around on me. And then the priest would come up to this poor woman and question her, you know, try to figure out, discern. And if the husband really wanted to press this issue, he would demand in other words, if the woman continues to say, no, I have not stepped out on my husband, I haven't done anything wrong against him. And so that's the whole idea here, the bitter water trial. And they make her drink this concoction. And if she's innocent, nothing happens to her. And then, you know what? Because she went through this horrible ordeal and she was innocent, much to the egg on the face of her husband, because now her husband realizes, I falsely accused my wife. And so what Yahweh does is he gives this innocent woman children. He opens her womb and gives her children as a result of this. But if the woman is lying and she really did step out on her husband, then what happens is it turns into a horrible disease. She ends up dying after taking this potion. But all of this connects to the Lilith, and he really can't understand the bitter water trial without understanding that. So let's take a look at this, 320. The serpent's curses match those of an adulterous wife in the bitter water trial. For me, the most intriguing evidence that the serpent was the failed first wife of Adam comes from Yahweh's infamous cursing upon her and Eve in Genesis 3:14 through 15. The framework for these curses indicate that Yahweh judged the serpent and Eve in the first bitter water trial. The bitter water trial is the husband's test of for adultery in a wife as specified in Numbers chapter 5, 10 through 31. Okay, so let me look at this question. So now I wanted children and I could have cursed and I could accuse my wife. If I do it, will it work now? I don't know if she would agree to it unless I said it was sweet tea. Yeah. Yeah, well, it almost seems very barbaric and archaic, really, this thing. But basically it elevates the position of a priest beyond just a figurehead. There are powerful elements at work, and they have primordial origins all the way back to this tale of Lilith in the garden. Now, a similar thing happened, remember, to the midwives who refused to turn in the Hebrew children to Pharaoh. They kept saying, they kept saying, we can't control it because the Hebrew women are so lively and they have their babies so fast, And so, what did Yahweh do? The midwives, the Egyptian midwives, he blessed them with children as a result of them standing up for life. Standing up for children yields you a blessing of children. Did you know that? Standing up for children. All right, so let's continue on here. So this is the bitter water trial. This is a husband's test for adultery in a wife, as specified in Numbers 5:10-31. Yahweh judged the serpent according to an adulterous woman undergoing a trial. Yahweh judged Eve according to an innocent woman subjected to the trial. In other words, basically, he's comparing Eve to Lilith. Lilith was guilty. Eve is innocent. She was faithful to her husband. She represents the pure generation. Lilith and her progeny represent impure generation. And this is found in the bitter water trial. Okay. And like the trials adulteress, the serpent ate dust, her belly suffered curses, and she and her seed would be slain by the promised seed of the innocent woman. Now remember that prophecy. Now, this is what this is talking about, that she and her seed, this is talking about Lilith and the generations of heaven. These are the impure seed, the Nephilim, and then the demons that are in the earth even now, troubling people. That they would be slain by the promised seed of the innocent woman. The innocent woman is Eve. And the pure line extending all the way to Messiah and his sacrifice on the tree is the seed of the innocent woman. Now, notice this here. This is in Genesis here. And so let's go here. Okay, Genesis 3:15. This is the one we want right here. Okay, so now let's start in verse 13. And Yahweh, let's see here if I can get this closed here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, okay. And Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat." And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed above all the cattle, above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman." So in this understanding, the thee is Lilith, and the woman is Eve. And between thy seed, this is Lilith's seed, the generations of the heaven, and her seed. That would be the generations of the earth, what would be people that are descended from Adam and Eve. It shall bruise thy head. In other words, these demons are harming people. Her seed are harming people. In other words, the Lilith and her progeny are harming people. And it shall bruise thy head, and you shall bruise his heel. So basically, I think I like a translation is better. It shall crush your head, and you shall bruise his heel. I don't know why it says it shall bruise thy head. In other words, the generations of the heavens are going to bruise the head of Messiah, which is the final lineage. He's the last Adam, right? And you shall bruise his heel. In other words, these demons are going to harm. This is a prophecy of Yeshua Messiah. They are going to harm him. That's why he had to go through the crucifixion. That's why he had to be whipped. That's why they thought, we get rid of this. We get rid of this this person who is upsetting the demonic order. in the world. And but little do they know, Yeshua rose from the dead 3 days and 3 nights. That's what that's talking about. Okay, so let's see where we were at. So Yahweh judged Eve according to the innocent woman, subjected the trial like the trials of adulteress. The sieve ate dust. The serpent ate dust. Her belly suffered curses. This is a reference to the Soda trial. And she and her seed would be slain by the promised seed of the innocent woman, right? Yeah, that's right, Vicky. Like the trials, innocent woman, Eve suffered pain in birthing her promised seed, although her promised seed would be wounded. That would be the crucifixion right there. It would prevail over the curse and crush the head of her rival. Yeshua Messiah. Have you ever read where Yeshua Messiah put to shame these powers and principalities? Have you ever read that? Let me show you that. That's what that's talking about right there. All right, let's see. How does that go? Made a show of powers. Let me see if I can bring that up on my phone so I can figure out where it's at. That's right, Colossians 2:15. Take a look at that. All right, so and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. This is talking about Yeshua Messiah rising from the dead. He overcame the generations of the heaven. He overcame the demons. He overcame Satan. He overcame death. You see that? And he made a show of them. He triumphed over them in the resurrection. That's what that's in reference to right there. So that's what this is. It would prevail over the curses and crush the head of her rival, the rival being Lilith and her generations, the demons and Satan. Through her promised seed, this is Eve now, she would be saved from the curses. And so this is why the gospel is even all the way back in Genesis. The gospel is in Genesis 2, guys. So those not fear the bitter water trial might consider this proposed evidence as one of the most esoteric proofs for Lilith. However, as one becomes more familiar with the trial, it becomes clear that it solves many mysteries concerning her. First, the trial reveals that the serpent was adulterous in her rebellion. And so remember, in the story of Lilith, Yahweh created Lilith and Adam. They were co-equal. They were on the same creative order. But Lilith rebelled, would not submit to Adam, and she flew the coop, essentially. And so basically, she ended up shacking up with Samael, the head of these fallen angels that came down to Mount Hermon, and they had relations, and their progeny was Azazel. And remember that the scapegoat in the Yom Kippur ceremony is named what? Who can tell me in Hebrew? The priest puts his hand on this goat and he says, Le Azazel. And he sends that goat. They take the goat in the wilderness. That's got all the sins of Israel on it. They take this goat into the wilderness and they throw it off a cliff and it goes down to its death. Okay, so the entire Yom Kippur ceremony is playing out this drama of the generations of heaven versus the generation of the earth. Let me see what you've got here, Vicky. You've got some comments. Dust thou shalt eat is the same as eating food offered to idols. No, but what the nations slaughtered, they slaughtered demons, not Elohim. I do not wish you to become sharers with demons. Interesting. You shall not, you are not able to drink the cup of the master and the cup of demons. You're not able to partake of the table of the master and the table of demons. That's a very good comment there, Vicky. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So, so basically, let's get rid of this here. If I can get rid of this, I guess I have to leave it there. There we go. All right. Through her promised seed, she would be saved from the curses. Those not familiar with the bitter water trial might consider this proposed evidence as one of the more esoteric proofs for Lilith. However, as one becomes more familiar with the trial, it becomes clear that it solves many mysteries concerning her. First, the trial reveals the serpent was adulterous in her rebellion. This confirms Lilith's legend that she mated with angels and bore seed to them, Samael, reputedly. Secondly, the trial confirms that Lilith was idolatrous against Elohim and contemptuous of his power. She didn't respect that Yahweh had made Adam as the head, and she did not respect that. This again matches the general tenor of the Lilith legend. Thirdly, the mystical elements of the trial also elucidate the details of the struggle between the seed of the serpent and the seed of Eve. This struggle finds portrayals and foreshadowing throughout the Bible. It manifests itself in many diverse events, from Israel's golden calf episode at Mount Sinai to Israel's Yom Kippur ceremony. So the golden calf episode is actually an homage to Lilith, to demons. In order to understand how the trial pertains to Lilith and Eve, a basic review of the bitter water trial is needed. There are two fundamental sources of information on the trial, which we shall study. First and foremost is the description of the trial in the book of Numbers. Second is the trial's discussion of the Talmud. The Talmud was written by rabbis who lived a lot long after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. I would say AD, Anno Domini, in Latin, means year of our Lord. He's using CE to kind of, a lot of the modern day scholars means common era. The principal goal of that ancient book was to preserve for posterity the details of the temple rituals. The bitter water trial was one such ritual. Okay, so 320.1.1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is open this up for comments. Let's see here. Yeah, I think we already have comments. Do we have any vocal or any other comments on this before we move on? This is where we're going to pick it up here. Any thoughts? Anybody want to share? Should be able to unmute yourself if you want to mention something. Otherwise, we'll continue on. Okay, not right now. All right, so 320 verse 321. This is basically just where it's at there. The bitter water trial in Numbers. The best place to start studying the bitter water trial is to see what the Bible says about it. Below is the Bible's description of the bitter water trial in Numbers 5:11 through 31. This is Numbers 5:11 through 31. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak unto the children of Israel, say to them, if any man's wife goes aside and commits a trespass against him, and a man lie with her carnally, and it be hid from the eyes of her husband, and be kept close, and she be defiled, and there be no witness against her, neither she be taken with the manner, and the spirit of jealousy come upon him," that be the husband, "and he be jealous of his wife, and she be defiled, or if the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be not defiled." So that's a situation where he's falsely accusing her. It's all up in his head. "Then shall the man bring his wife unto the priest, and he shall bring her offering for her, the 10th part of the ephah of barley meal. He shall pour no oil on it, nor put frankincense thereon. For it is an offering of jealousy, an offer of memorial, bringing iniquity to remembrance. And the priest shall bring her near and set her before Yahweh. And the priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel, and the dust that is in the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall take and put it in the water." He's putting dust in the water on the floor of the tabernacle. "And the priest shall set the woman before Yahweh and uncover the woman's head and put the offering of memorial in her hands, which is the jealousy offering. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that caused the curse. And the priest shall charge her by an oath and say to the woman, if no man have laid with you, and if you have not gone aside to uncleanness with another instead of your husband, be you free from this bitter water that causes the curse. But if you have gone aside to another instead of your husband, and if you've been defiled, and some men have lain with you beside thy husband, then the priest shall charge the woman with an oath of cursing. The priest shall say unto the woman, Yahweh make thee a curse and an oath among thy people, when Yahweh doth make thy thigh to rot and thy belly to swell. And this water that causeth the curse shall go into the bowels, to make thy belly to swell and thy thigh to rot. And the woman shall say, Amen, amen. Notice that think about a lot of, if there was any guilty women that showed up, they would probably think, oh, this is just, nothing will happen to me. This is just, it's, think about the attitude of a lot of people today. They think in such scientific terms. They don't realize the world beyond the scientific. They don't realize there's very powerful powers beyond just what our senses can detect, right? And so they go by their own failed human logic. So she literally agrees to this curse on herself. Okay, so she says, Amen, amen. And then the priest shall write these curses in a book, and he shall blot them out with the bitter water, and he shall cause the woman to drink the bitter water that causes the cause, and the water that causes the cause shall enter into her and become bitter. Then the priest shall take the jealousy offering out of the woman's hand, and shall wave the offering before Yahweh and offer it upon the altar. And the priest shall take an handful of offering, even the memorial thereof, and burn it upon the altar, and afterwards shall cause the woman to drink the water. And when he hath made her drink the water, that it shall come to pass that if she be defiled and have done trespass against her husband, that the water that caused the curse shall enter into her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thigh shall rot, and the woman shall be a curse among her people. So she won't die immediately, but I mean, it does sound like she's got some kind of a thing going on there that's okay, we got a question here. Vicky says, sounds like a form of divination, honestly. Can you comment on why it isn't? Well, if the offering is going before Yahweh, if we say divination, then we're implying that it is interaction with demons. And there is power that is given from demons. This is divination, and that qualifies as the warning that's given all throughout the Tanakh and in the New Testament as well. But this is before Yahweh, and there is power in Yahweh, and he has a method, and this method was this formula is given to the priest of Yahweh. That's the best answer I can give you on that, Vicky. All right, and it finishes up here. And if the woman be not defiled, but be clean, then she shall be free and shall conceive seed. Now, notice this, she gets a blessing. She's going to get children now as a result of being put through this by her husband. Notice this almost sounds like, remember how Jacob didn't love Leah as well as he loved Rachel, and how Yahweh opened up Leah's womb and she had a bunch of children. And every time she had a son, she said, now my husband shall love me. Yahweh has a funny way of working. He is the great equalizer. See, he's the great equalizer. If you've gone through something hard in your life and you have remained faithful to Yahweh, guess what? There's a present for you at the end of it. There's a present for you, and it's from our Heavenly Father. So this is the law of jealousies, when a wife goes aside to another instead of her husband and is defiled, or when the spirit of jealousy come upon him and he be jealous over his wife, and shall set the woman before Yahweh, and the priest shall execute upon her all this law. Then shall the man be guiltless from iniquity, and this woman shall bear her iniquity. Now notice this here, the implication is the man could be guilty of iniquity of falsely accusing his innocent wife. Notice that there, isn't that something? Okay, so the trial's rituals might seem bizarre and brutal to the modern Western mind. The main purpose of the trial, besides discovering if a woman had cheated on her husband, seems to be to destroy the adulterous woman. The trial also has stupendous supernatural elements that are a challenge to accept. Did every adulterous woman who underwent the trial actually suffer such a horrible death? If so, why would any guilty woman ever subject herself to such fate? Table 317 below gives a breakdown of the 20 major steps of the Bitterwater trial. This table is constructed from a literal reading of the text, okay? So eventually, looks like the guilty one did die. Yeah, like a false arrest, there's a consequence. You know, if you judge it wrongly, and if you're a law enforcement officer, or in this case, the husband, he judges wrongly and he's falsely accusing his innocent wife, she gets a blessing. Okay. All right, so verse 15. So let's take a look here. Event and description. The husband brings wife to priest. The husband brings wife a minka, meal offering for her. 16, the priest brings woman before Yahweh. 4, this is verse 17. Priest places holy water in earthen vessel. Priest adds dust of tabernacle floor to this water. Number 6, priest sets woman before Yahweh. The priest, number 7, priest uncovers woman's heads. 8, priest puts minka in her hands. This is a meal offering. That's what that is. Priest has in his hand the bitter water that caused the curse. And number 10, priest causes woman to swear to her innocence. And the priest charges an oath to the woman to be free of bitter water if guiltless. Priest charges a second oath of cursing to the woman. That is, if she is guilty, her thigh will rot and her belly swell because of the water. 13, woman responds, amen and amen. She agrees to the conditions. She agrees to them. The priest writes curses in a book and blots it out in the water. The woman drinks the water. 16, the water causes bitter pain in her. 17, the priest takes minka from her, waves it, and brings it to the altar. The priest takes a handful of minka and burns it on the altar. 19, a woman drinks the water again. And 20A, 20B, this would be the difference between whether the woman is guilty or whether she's innocent. The woman is defiled and she's an adulteress. The water shall cause bitter pain. Her belly shall swell and her thighs shall rot. But if she's innocent, a woman is pure, she is free, and shall conceive a child. All right, so there's an important and obvious feature of the trial that needs to be noted. Verse 27 is clear that the adulterous woman shall be destroyed by fantastic curses. Even more importantly, verse 28 is quite clear, and that the innocent woman shall conceive seed as a result of the trial. The verse may even be interpreted as saying she shall conceive the seed during the trial's rituals. Wow, isn't that something? This is a remarkably naked statement concerning the deeper mysteries of the trial, namely that it involves the supernatural insemination of seed. I don't know about that. I think that might be a step too far. I think probably what I understand that to say is that it's next time they have relations. A husband's going to be feeling awful bad about his wife. He falsely accused her. She's innocent. Maybe he wants to make it up to her and have relations quickly with her. That could be, you know, Father blesses those relations and he allows a child to you know, result as a response to that. Well, if she did think about it this way, if she did not take the bitter water, if she did not take it, then there's probably other things that could be done. That basically they say, well, then you're guilty. Remember that there was a death sentence associated with being an adulteress or an adulterer. There's a death sentence. So, you know, it's very, you know, when you look over the Torah commandments and you look over the penal code, I mean, it's very serious business. Welcome, Melissa. Welcome. Okay, so now any questions or comments on that section there? Okay, so let's go on the bitter water trial in the Talmud. Okay, so let's see what the Talmud says. Not that we put any stock in the Talmud, but there might be some correlation here. I mean, after all, the rabbis did know a few things, and, you know, it's worth looking it over. In the Talmud, there is a wealth of additional information on the bitter water trial. This information fleshes out the bare bone account provided in Numbers. Much of the extra detail provided by the Talmud can be verified by other passages in the Tanakh that reference the bitter water trial and generating prophetic or poetic imagery. The Talmud's Mishnah calls the adulterous woman of the bitter water trial a sota. Sota means to deviate or to turn away from. In other words, it's assuming that the sota is the adulterous woman. She's turned away from her husband, see? The term applies to the adulterous woman because she has turned away from both her husband and the Torah, which obviously we know in the Torah includes a warning against adultery. The woman sota is used only 6 times in the entire Bible. 4 of these come in the bitter water trial of Numbers chapter 5. There it is used to describe the defiled woman who has turned away from her husband. According to the Mishnah, in the days of the Second Temple, a husband had the right to submit his wife to the sota trial if he had any reasonable doubt as to his wife's faithfulness. Now, it says here, any reasonable doubt. So probably this kind of thing was a very serious matter, and he couldn't just drag her to the priest. Maybe he had to go through a few investigations first. Maybe there were some investigations. I mean, that would make sense, right? You want to make sure that this is a deadly serious matter before taking this final step and bringing these two. Bringing this woman to the priest. For example, if the husband had warned his wife not to seclude herself with a certain man, and she later allowed herself to be alone with that man for a time sufficient to have had intercourse, then the husband had the right to submit his wife to the trial. Interesting. The wife could refuse to take the waters, but this was grounds for divorce. Interesting. There's what the rabbis say about that question, Vicky. Grounds for divorce. If she agreed to take the test, the husband began the process by taking his wife and any necessary witnesses to the local Bet Din, the court or literally house of judgment. If the woman pleaded innocent before the Bet Din and indicated that she was willing to drink the waters of the sota, then the Bet Din would refer the case to the Sanhedrin. That would be the Jewish religious Supreme Court that convened in the Temple of Jerusalem. This meant that the husband and wife would journey to Jerusalem. During this time, the husband was not allowed to have sexual relations with his wife. Well, first of all, because if she was guilty, there's actually a prohibition. Did you know that? There's a prohibition in the Torah. Yeah, but you wouldn't be guilty, would you, Vicky? You don't have the thigh that rots if you're innocent. Plus, you would get a child at the end of it. See? If a woman was innocent, she probably would agree to go along with it. Why else would I refuse the test? If a woman was guilty, she might refuse the test. Yeah, if she was guilty, right? All right, so let's see here. If the woman pleaded innocent before the Bet Din, let's see here. The woman pleaded innocent before the Bet Din and indicated that she was willing to drink the waters of the sota. Then the Bet Din would refer the case to the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court that convened in the Temple of Jerusalem. This meant the husband and wife would journey to Jerusalem. Okay, so they're not supposed to have sexual relations. I think this is where I left off. Once the husband and wife were before the Sanhedrin, the priest would vigorously persuade the woman to confess to her misdeed and forego the trial. They would really try to get her to confess because they didn't want her to die. From this horrible way. Their motivation was to prevent the holy name of Yahweh from being blotted out during the trial's rituals. Interesting. They had such a reverence for the name. This name was written twice upon the scroll to be blotted in the bitter waters. The erasure of Yahweh's name was considered a very serious matter. The priest would fervently attempt to prevent this from occurring. They would give incentives to the woman to confess. They would say to the woman, my daughter, much is done by wine, much is done by joking around, much is done by kidding, and much is done by bad friends. For the sake of the great name, which is written in holiness, do it so that it will not be blotted out by water. In other words, confess. If she did confess, the woman was ordered to leave her husband, and the case was dismissed. In other words, it might be that they allowed the husband to write out a Deuteronomy 24 bill of divorce. However, as she still insisted on her purity, And the priest then attempted to tire her out. In other words, they would tire this, they would try to tire this woman out. They led her back and forth all over the temple, and this they hoped that she would become worn out to the point of confession. If after this she still insisted on her innocence, they would take her to the eastern gate, which is Nicanor's gate. This gate stood before the sacrificial altar and separated the court of the women and the court of Israel. This gate is the closest point to which women were allowed to approach the altar in the Haikal, the holy place. It is in this place that the women were purified after childbirth and that lepers were purified. At this point, the Mishnah relates that the woman underwent a series of public humiliations intended to disgrace her. A priest would tear her clothes until her breasts were exposed. He would let her hair down, also mentioned in Numbers 5:17, which was a particular disgrace for a Jewish woman. The woman's jewelry was removed from her and a rope made of twigs was tied around her. The Midrash indicates a flaxen rope from Egypt was used. Yeah, probably, Vicky. Spectators were allowed to come and stare at her in her disgrace. In short, she was made a public spectacle. The Mishnah considered it a mitzvah, divine precept, for a woman to come and take part in the humiliation of the sota by witnessing these acts. This belief was justified with Ezekiel 23:48, which asserted they should do so, such that all women may take warning and not commit lewdness as you have done. Let's take a look at that. I want to look at that Ezekiel 23:48. Ezekiel 23:48. Take a look at that. Figure out how they're putting the. Okay. Let's get up here. Ezekiel 23. All right, 48. All right, let's take a look at this down here. Thus shall I cause lewdness to cease out of the land, that all women may be taught not to do after your lewdness. So let's look back here. The company. Okay, so, and the righteous men, they shall judge them the manner of adulteresses after the manner of women that shed blood, because they are adulteresses, and blood is in their hands. But thus says sovereign Yahweh, I will bring a company upon them, and I will give them be removed and spoiled, and the company shall stone them with stones, dispatch them with their swords. They shall slay their sons and their daughters and burn up their house with fire. Thus I will cause lewdness to cease of the land, that all women may be taught not to do after your lewdness, and they shall recompense your lewdness upon you, and you shall bear the sins of your idols, and you shall know that I am sovereign Yahweh. Interesting. So that's basically kind of like a witness kind of thing, looks like. Okay, so that's for Ezekiel, which asserted they should do so such that all women may take warning and not commit lewdness as you have done. The Mishnah further explains that these acts were done unto the woman mida keneged mida, which means that the sin you measure out shall be measured back to you in equal form and injustice. The Sota primped herself for sin. Therefore, the omnipresent made her repulsive. She exposed herself to sin. Therefore, the omnipresent exposed her to her peers. She began to sin with the thigh and afterward with the belly. Therefore, the thigh suffers the curse first and after the belly. Interesting. It's almost like there's perfect symmetry. The sinful action has a response, and it even goes down to the detail of where in the biology of a woman that the response occurs. And the curse occurs, which is the thigh and the belly, and that would be her womb, up in her womb, right? Yeah, it shall be measured back to you. Okay. The Mishnah relates that when the husband brought his wife forward to the priest, he carried his wife a minka meal offering for her in a basket of palm twigs. The husband then took this basket, placed it into the hands of his wife. This unusual minka had 4 qualities, unique from all other minka offerings prescribed by the Torah. First, all other minka offerings began and ended their ceremonial use in a temple service utensil. The soda offering came forth in a basket of palm twigs. Second, all other Minka offerings required oil and frankincense. This is Numbers 15:15, strictly forbids this for the sota. Okay, so thirdly, all other Minka offerings were of wheat. This offering was of barley. Fourthly, although the Omer meal offering was barley, it was sifted barley flour. The sota Minka was unsifted flour. Interesting. So I look at the detail here, and for every single procedure, they even have a different type of meal they were using. Wouldn't that be an interesting study? Talk about getting into the jots and tittles of the scripture. The priest prepared the bitter waters by first taking a new clay bowl and filling it with water from the temple's laver. That would laver is like where the water was, where the priest would come and wash their hands, pronounce the blessing. The priest would then enter the Heikel, that's the temple, turn right and lift a marble flagstone by a ring attached to it. He then grabbed a handful of dust from the floor beneath the flagstone and put it in the water. So it's the dirt under the marble stone. The Midrash states that the dust was added to the water as a reminder to the woman that if she was innocent, she was promised by God a son of the caliber of Abraham. Interesting. Who described himself as dust and ashes. This follows the teachings on golems and the book The Bitter Waters Code, which hold that the dust of the trial was the basis for forming the body of the trial's supernaturally inseminated seed. That's interesting. I don't know about that. The priest would then write the following curses on a scroll. The curses and commandment to write them come straight from the text of Numbers 5:19-21. The two occurrences of the word Yahweh in the curse are the holy name of Yahweh. Okay. So the written curses of the trial: if no man is lain with you and you have not turned aside to uncleanness while you are under your husband's authority, be free from this water of bitterness that brings the curse. But if you have gone astray, though you are under your husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself and some man other than your husband is lain with you, then Yahweh shall make an exception and an oath among your people when Yahweh makes your thigh fall away and your body swell. The Mishnah then states that the priest took the offering from the basket, put it in a utensil of service, lay this into the woman's hands. Next, the priest took the offering, waved it, and brought it near the altar. He took a handful and burned it upon the altar. The remaining portion would be for the priest to eat. It is here that a disagreement about the sequence of events occurs. Some rabbis believe the priest would first give the woman the water to drink and then offer up her minka. However, our Simeon says that first the priest would offer up her meal offering and then give her water to drink. I hold both are right because the woman drinks twice. Interesting. That's right. She takes from the cup twice, doesn't she? In Numbers 5:24, the priest causes the woman to drink. Then in verse 25 and 26, he offers her minka. In verse 26, after the minka is offered, the woman drinks again. If the text is taken to mean what it plainly states, then one must conclude that the woman drank the waters twice, once before and once after the minka offering. If a woman was guilty, immediately upon her second drinking, her face turned yellow. Look at that. Her eyes bulged out and her veins swelled. Wow. The priest yelled to have her taken away promptly, lest her quickly putrefying body defiled the temple courtyard. That almost, the imagery here almost is like Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. Think about that. Remember that Nazi guy remember that Nazi guy in Indiana Jones and Last Crusade? Basically, they go to Pella and they go into this secret chamber, and then there's like 3 traps they have to get through, and they finally get into this, and there's a knight that's been there for hundreds of years. And they're all trying to get this chalice. They're trying to get this chalice that apparently caught the blood of Messiah when the centurion pierced his side while he was on the cross. And that chalice is called, help me out somebody, what's that chalice? Who watches that Indiana Jones like I do? I like it because it's got a lot of history in it, but the chalice is called the Grail. Thank you. The Holy Grail. All right, yeah. So Remember, the Nazi guy gets in there with this floozy behind him, and he goes, you know, he's trying to pick, and the knight says, choose wisely, because, you know, choose wisely, because you're going to be in trouble if you get the wrong one. That's the implication. So this Nazi guy goes in there and he takes the most beautiful chalice. I mean, after all, that's got to be the right one, right? Takes this chalice and he goes, dips it into the water and he drinks. And you notice that his body starts aging super hyper fast, and his skin shrinks and his hair starts running out like crazy. It's like a freaky thing to see. And he just turns into dust right there. That's the idea being conveyed here, guys. Almost, I mean, very supernatural, horrific death. And that last comment that the knight makes, you know, the knight's been in there for hundreds of years. He says, he chose poorly. He chose poorly. Oh my goodness. Anyway, guys, that's an interesting. By the way, there's another one coming out. I don't really mean to stump for the, you know, Indiana Jones, but somebody told me. I think my kid told me about it. You gotta go watch this, Dad. I don't know. We'll see. I think Harrison Ford's getting a little long in the tooth, isn't he? A little long in the tooth, maybe. All right. All right. So. Now, continues on here. The Mishnah concludes that shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple, the Sanhedrin, under the leadership of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, decided to discontinue the trial of the Sota. This was done because the supernatural curses no longer took effect, and the holy name of Yahweh was blotted out in vain. Wow, look at that. After the destruction of the Second Temple, hey, wait a minute. So the Second Temple is Herod's temple. So you know what? You know what's happening here? Flavius Josephus says in his War on the Jews, he says that there were several miracles that were occurring on Yom Kippur. Things like the doors would open. Things like the thread would turn white. The red thread would turn white if the sacrifice of Yom Kippur was accepted. And when Yeshua was crucified and he went into the center of the earth 3 days, 3 nights, and then he rose again. The very next year, all of the miracles stopped. So you know what this says to me? This says to me that in this is why the second covenant, the renewed covenant, is so much better covenant, because if a woman's caught in adultery, this trial does not apply to her in our dispensation. The miracles have stopped anyway. So it's just confession now. And yes, the husband might have a choice to divorce her, but maybe he could forgive her too. And it's covered by the blood of Yeshua. You know, think about that. Okay, so discontinue the trial of Sota. So this was done because supernatural curses no longer took effect, and the holy name of Yahweh was blotted out in vain. The miracle stopped in 30 CE, about the time that Yeshua rose again, which is 40 years before. No miracles in Judaism, but we have miracles now. Why? Because they're done through the Ruach HaKodesh. Remember, Yeshua said, because you reject the author of life, lo, I turn to. Now the Bible does a very bad translation here. They say Gentiles, but actually in Greek, the term is akrabustio. And akrabustio literally means those who had circumcision but cast it off. So it's talking about the house of Israel. And that's, I'm getting into a whole nother subject now, but this goes into what Paul's letters talk about and so on. But let's stay focused here. The miracle stopped in 30 CE, which is so yes, there's miracles. There's miracles now. In fact, even more miracles. In fact, Messiah said that those who truly believe will do even greater miracles than him. You ever read that? All right. The miracle stopped in 30 CE, which is 40 years before the temple's destruction, the time of Yeshua's crucifixion. The rabbis attribute the miracles lost to a general spiritual decline in the people. Actually, they crucified the Lord of life. The rabbis are messed up in the head. They're messed up in the head. A lot of them have bought the lie that grave diggers came and stole the body. Or they came and they opened how does that go? I remember what the centurions were paid to say, that disciples came and took the body away and then made up the lie about the resurrection. Remember that? That's what the rabbis believe today, right? But we know that the Lord of life rose from the grave. He rose from the grave, and he is at the right hand of the Father, and he's interceding for us, right? The miracle stopped in 30 AD, which is 40 years before the temple's destruction and the time of Yeshua's crucifixion. The rabbis attribute the miracle's loss to a general spiritual decline in the people. The only other commonly recurring miracle of the temple also stopped at the same time. This involved the miraculous transformation of the scapegoat's shani cloth from crimson to white during the Yom Kippur atonement ceremony. That wasn't the only miracle that Flavius Josephus talks about. He talks about these massive doors opening on their own. They had to have been done by angels. There's several miracles that was happening, and they stopped. That's because it's no longer the blood of bulls and goats that forgives sin. It's the blood of the one and only Master, Yeshua Messiah. All right, so let me see what kind of time we got here. I feel like I've done an hour. Let's see what my record says here on Facebook. Figure out, I think it's the iPhone that tells me what the, yeah, I'm at an hour, guys. All right, so what I'm gonna do is mark this here. This will be where we leave off the next time. Let's see here. Move this out of the way. We'll hit that. That's our bookmark. And we will continue the next time. So you're quite welcome. I was happy to present this material and discourse on it. Any comments before we go? If you want to comment a little bit, that's fine too. Any comments? Anybody have anything to say? A lot of material here, and it covers so many different areas, doesn't it? So many different areas. Melissa, go ahead. There you go. You should be able to unmute now.
I just wanted to say it was funny because you kept saying, does anybody have anything to say? But whenever I would go to say something, it would say, you're muted.
Oh, I wonder if I've got, well, I don't have the security feature on where it says, oh, maybe that I need to put that check mark there, unmute themselves. Okay, I fixed it, guys. So now
that's why nobody's talking to you.
Okay, I hit the wrong security feature. Sorry about that, guys.
So I did want you to elaborate a little bit. You said that word that's translated Gentiles, what is it again?
In the Greek, it's akarbustio, and it means basically the implication is those who were circumcised but who cast it off. And so this.
How can you cast off circumcision?
Well, it means it's idiomatically, it means that they forsook the Torah, and it's a reference to Hosea, the book of Hosea, where it says the house of Israel forsook the Torah, and they forsook the Elohim of Israel, and they were carried away. They were carried away into dispersion, and they mixed with all the peoples round about. And remember when Yeshua said to the woman who came to him and begging him to heal, I think it was how does that go? She was begging Yeshua. Let me see if I can find this this for you to explain this a little bit.
Is it just certain verses that translated it that way, or is it a lot of verses?
Let me answer that here in a minute. Here, Matthew 15. Let's look at Matthew 15 real quick here. Okay. can never figure out what the, all right, let's go to 15. All right, so this is the where it's at. All right, so here it is. Look at this verse here. It says here, verse 22, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, that's Yeshua, saying, have mercy on me, O my master, you son of David. Look how she recognizes him, the son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she cries out after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. There it is. That's acrobustio. Acrobustio. Those who had a circumcision, but they tossed it aside. They tossed aside the covenants. They tossed aside their faith in Yahweh, and they were taken away. The entire kingdom was taken away by Assyria. And so Yeshua, one of his main goals was to gather them again. And in his death, the lost sheep of Israel will no longer be lost. They would be brought back into the covenant, and they would be in full standing as children of Yahweh. And as identifying, they're identified now as Israel again. Okay, so I am only sent unto the lost sheep of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, my master, help me. And it continues on. So that's what I'm referencing then. All right. Any other questions? Still got your hand up there, Melissa. Everybody should be able to get on the mic now. I need to. Okay, well, I was happy to present this for you guys, and the YouTube video will be on there. I have included, basically, I put all the Lilith videos in one playlist on the Hebrew Messianic Israel. If you go to hmisrael.com, you'll see the YouTube tab there. Hit that, take you right to the YouTubes, and all of those playlists will be there. So may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Shalom, shalom, everyone.